Hello friends, and welcome back to Deborah After 50 Unlocked. Today's video is a little bit different from the norm. It's a little bit more personal. As many of you know, our beautiful dog Koko passed away just over a week ago now. And she was such a big part of our family that I didn't want to sit in the sadness of it any longer. I really wanted to share her life, share her quirky traits, and share her stories with you. These are stories that when we talk about Koko, we bring joy to us. And I wanted to share these with you and also invite you to share in the comments below the stories of your pets. I know many of you have reached out to me during these last few weeks, sharing the sorrow that you felt and how you've empathized with my loss because you also lost a loved pet, and how it's taken a long time to recover from that. And so I want to create a community in this video where we can share and celebrate the love and the happiness and the joy that these pets have brought into our lives. I want this to be a place where we can remember and celebrate our pets, not in sadness, but in joy. So let me start with how Koko came into our lives. Before Koko, we used to have Bianca, a Samoyed. If you know Samoyeds, they're big, white, fluffy dogs that shed constantly. And we had Bianca for a good 9 years. She passed away a few days after Charlotte was born, my youngest daughter. And it was such a big loss at the time that I could not fathom getting another dog. It felt like I would be replacing Bianca, and I could never do that. So it took us 4 years before we considered getting another dog. And it really only happened because Charlotte, my youngest one, who was 4 at the time, had been in contact with some dogs, puppies, mind you, not big dogs, just small puppies. And she's shown herself to be really afraid of dogs. And I didn't want that for her. I wanted her to love dogs the same way, you know, my older two love dogs and the way my husband and I love dogs. And so on Mother's Day, 2010 in effect, we went to Richmond, the IKEA centre there. I think it's Victoria Garden. And they still, back in those days, used to have pet stores. And we went wandering in there and we looked at different dogs. And I knew that I didn't want a big dog and I didn't want a dog that shed. So in my mind, I knew that I wanted a small dog and something that was easy care. I had 3 children at that stage, a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old and a 9-year-old. Life was busy. They were at school, one was at kinder. It was full on. I didn't want a big dog that required a lot of work. So on the day, we went to this store and I saw they had a litter of cavoodles and they were all black. And my husband, in a different pen, saw a litter of sausage dogs. And he wanted to buy a sausage dog. And I convinced him that because it was Mother's Day, and I would get my choice, which was a cavoodle. They were small, they didn't shed, and they had a lovely personality from my research. So out of this litter of 4 cavoodles, one stood out to me, Koko. She was sitting in a corner, really quiet. All her siblings were jumping up and down, trying to get her attention. And she was just sitting there quietly, sort of feeling a little bit, she looked to me like she was feeling lost and wanted to be loved, but didn't know how to, make a fuss to become the center of attention. And so she looked at me with these beautiful chocolate brown eyes. And I felt like I connected with her. So we bought her. The kids all loved her, and we chose the name Koko. You might have guessed, because Koko Black is a chocolate store in Australia, and her eyes reminded me of molten chocolate when she looked up at us. They used to just melt with adoration. And she was a quiet one, and I thought, well, you know, a quiet dog will be easier to integrate in our family rather than a more rambunctious one. Little did I know that a week later she started being sick, and I took her to the vet and she had an infection. She was fine, got the right medication, the right treatment, and that quiet little puppy ended up being a rambunctious, normal puppy.
Get it.
And we all fell in love with her.
Get it.
Koko was
Get it.
adorable.
Oh.
She was a bundle of energy, and she easily fitted into our family. Each of the kids thought it was their dog. At a young age, we took Koko to the beach. In those days, we used to go to Ganamata Beach. If you're in Melbourne in Victoria, then you know the beach. It's the back beach of Rosebud. It's the ocean beach. We loved taking her there. Back then, you were able to take dogs into those parks, I think. Anyway, don't come for me. It's a nice story. And she didn't run amok and kill animals or anything like that. So we used to take her to the beach, and she loved the beach. We'd walk the beach. It's about a 2 to 3 kilometer stretch of beach before it gets to be rocky. And I'd walk ahead with one of the children, and Kevin would stay behind with some of the younger children, and we would call between us, and she would run to me, being ahead, and her ears would just flop in the breeze as she was running. The joy from her face, the tongue hanging out as she was running along the beach. As she would run on the beach, and she'd run to me, and then Kevin or the kids would call her back, and so she'd run back up the beach, and then I'd call her back. Anyway, we would do this as we were walking along the beach, all the way down to the point where you couldn't walk because there was just rocks at the end of that beach and the sand had finished. So then we would have to walk back. Well, of course, a poor little puppy, she was exhausted by then, having run up and back, for all that distance. And so then she'd plump herself down and she wouldn't move anymore. We'd have to pick her up. And so Kevin would carry her back to the car, and we'd go home. And those are the fondest memories for us, because I think that was her happy place. She adored the beach. We, in our old house before this, we used to live in a double-story house, and the bedrooms were on the second story, downstairs with tiles. So I tried to keep her downstairs so it was easier to keep clean in case she'd have an accident. And we used to have baby gates on the staircase. And that was fine until the baby gates were removed. And then she realized that she could run upstairs and jump on the kids' beds. And so what would happen is I would feed her at night outside. She would go into her business, and then we would open the door for her when she'd notify us that she was ready to come inside, because she would scratch at the glass door, so much so that later on, when we moved out of that house, we had to replace the glass door because she had scratched and damaged the door so badly. It looked terrible, just with her claws, because, sometimes we would leave her in the backyard when we had to go to work or go out. and she'd think we were still home. So she'd scratch and scratch and scratch away at the door, not realizing that there was no one home. Anyway, what would happen at night after we'd feed her is she would, without a thank you or anything like that, I would open a sliding door for her. Without her saying good night or anything, she would squeeze in, bolt into the house, and all I would hear is as she'd race up the staircase to go and jump on one of the kids' beds to go to sleep. That was it. She was spoiled. She loved sleeping on the bed with us. Her favourite spot, if my husband was on the couch, was sleeping and resting in the crook of his knees. Those are some of our fondest memories of Koko. She wasn't just a dog. Growing up, I never had a dog for an extended period of time. At best, we kept dogs for a couple of years, and then, anyway, long story, I never had a dog. And Kevin had a dog growing up, and unfortunately, he died in an accident. He was let out accidentally and got run over. So that was Kevin's only experience of a dog, and mine was more of a transient, having dogs. And Koko was the dog that I've had for the longest period in my life. We had her for 15 years. She had a way about her. I know you're not supposed to give them dogs these types of foods, but Koko lived a very long and healthy life. And I'm sharing this with you because it was a quirk. It was something fun that we used to do with her that she used to love. And she lived for over 15 years. For a cavoodle, that's a good amount of time. So I don't feel that what we did was intrinsically wrong. So I was sharing this with you in honesty, but also in knowing that you're going to be gentle with that information. She used to love, well, my husband loves chocolate-covered licorice, bullets. And somehow, accidentally, he found out that Koko, true to her name, had a nose for chocolate, and she especially loved bullets. So once in a while, he would tell her, I'm going to get a bullet. And she would know. She knew the meaning of the word bullet and knew that it was chocolate. And so she'd look at him like, oh, really? You're giving me a bullet? And she'd sit to attention. And sure enough, he'd throw the bullet and she would race to it and gobble it up. I don't even think she chewed it. She just gobbled it up. Another of her favourite meals was chicken livers. Whenever Kevin was in the kitchen cooking, she knew that he'd be cooking chicken livers. She'd smell it. And she would sit at attention at the table, knowing that as soon as we finished eating those chicken livers, that she would get the remains. Towards the end, 4 years ago, we bought a second dog because at the time Koko was 10 or 11 years old, and I was Googling and it appeared that cavoodles live between 10 and 12 years. And I didn't want to go through that loss, that time where we would be without a dog and the feeling of sadness of being without a dog. And so we introduced a new dog, another cavoodle, Daisy. Well, Daisy's personality is completely different from Koko. They're like your children. Everyone's part of your hand, but they're all different individuals. Well, Daisy's like that. And so when Daisy came along, of course, she got introduced to bullets as well. And so she would actually get a bullet as well. And towards the end, Daisy was the faster of the dogs. So Kevin would have to throw it for Daisy to go and run and catch it so that she could be distracted, and then hand it to Koko. And she loved it. And the same then with the livers. Daisy also started loving chicken livers, and so she would share it. And one thing about Koko, when we brought Daisy in, was that we realized how possessive she was of her food. She could not share. So we very quickly learned that we would have to give them two separate plates, because if Daisy finished first and went to Koko's plate to eat up, Koko would actually growl at her. And that is so unlike Koko. She never bit us. She never growled at us apart from play. But when it came to food and sharing, oh, that was a different story. Then, the growl would come out and she'd go, whoa. And Daisy would just jump back, not expecting it. Of course, she never bit at her, but the growl was enough to let Daisy know, stand back, this is my food. There are so many stories that I could share about Koko. She was one in a million, I feel, and completely irreplaceable. Many of you have reached out sharing your stories about dogs and how you also lost dogs recently and how difficult it is to deal with that loss. And I would really like to invite you to share some of your stories about your dogs, like I've shared here with you my stories about Koko. I feel like it would really help us all just to realize how different our pets' love is, how completely unconditional their love is. For them, we are their world. And I realized with the passing of Koko how different the love that we have for our pets is compared to the love that we have for another human being. As many of you who follow me would remember that a couple of years ago, 2.5 years ago exactly, my dad passed away. And it was an extremely difficult period for me at the time because that video is no longer up. It's actually in the members only community of my other channel, Deborah After 50. And at the time, my dad passed away, and to cut a long story short, we weren't close. And at the time, I found it very challenging because for many years, I felt that I could do something if I was better, if I was different, if I was more, I could have had a different relationship with my dad. And when he passed away, I felt sad because that opportunity of having that relationship was no longer there. And that loss of that possibility was really strong. And with Koko's passing, I realized something that I hadn't known. And that is that the difference between the love of a pet versus the love of a parent, or not necessarily of yours and mine. I think we all love differently. But what I realized was that in all those years of me feeling like I could have made a difference to the relationship with my dad, with Koko's passing, I realized that it really wasn't in my control, because with people, you both need to want to have a relationship. With pets, there's no choice. They adore you from day one. They don't have a choice. They don't know any different. It's not like they can say, you know what, I'm just going to go to another family and I'm going to start afresh with different people. With them, you're it. And so they love you unconditionally. To them, you're their world. And that was such a valuable lesson for me to learn recently, because it made me realize that the love of a pet is so different, no less than the love that we share with other human beings. But to her, I was enough. I was more than enough. And that is such a valuable feeling to have. And I'm really happy that we all got to experience that with her. My children love Koko, and we have so many wonderful memories of her to share and to talk about around the dinner table. While I cry for the loss of Koko, I also smile because Koko gave unconditional love to the very last moment. Towards the end, probably the last 6 months, we realised that Koko was starting to show her age. We'd take her for walks, and where in the past she would be just walking along right on in front of us, tugging at the leash and just on a mission. She was like walking down the footpath. In the end, she started walking more next to us, and then in the last week, the last walk that we took her on, she was lagging behind, and it was more stops than walks. And that walk was probably about 10 days before she passed. Her last week, the weekend before she passed, we knew that she didn't have weeks, that at best she'd have days. She stopped eating, and we'd entice her with roast chicken, her favourite. We'd entice her with chocolate, with butterscotch fingers, which were her favourite. Scotch finger? Yeah, the Scotch finger biscuits. She would be outside. I swear she could be outside. And my husband would open up a packet of Scotch finger biscuits and she would hear it. And if he was having a Scotch finger biscuit with his cup of coffee, she would have to get the other half. So it'd be one half for him and one half for her. In the end, once she stopped eating, even Scotch finger biscuits weren't interesting to her. And then she stopped drinking. And on her last day, I remember cuddling with her and wiping her eyes. She always used to get crusts around her eyes. And so I was with Charlotte and we were just cuddling her and cleaning her. I don't know whether it was a feeling that I had that she didn't have long to go. She hadn't drunk for about 3 days by that stage. And once we cleaned her up, we took her outside. I carried her outside to our faux grass area and just let her sniff the fresh air. And she could barely stand. And when she'd had a few minutes of that, I picked her up and I cuddled her and I told her that I loved her. And I took her back inside and I put her in a spot. And that was the end of Koko. But I don't want to finish this video on a sad note. Koko brought endless love to our family and endless joy, endless laughs. And we all adored her. And those memories that I've shared with you and dozens of others that I haven't will remain in our hearts forever. So while I cry, I also smile. Koko gave me nothing but love and joy and happy memories. And that's what I want to hold on to. Thank you so much for letting me share Koko with you. And if you feel comfortable enough, please share your happy memories of your loved pets in the comments below so that we can all cherish and spread the love that pets can give us unconditionally, wholeheartedly, and without asking anything in return. Until next time, my friends, have a fabulous day wherever you are, and thank you for your time. Bye.
Are you on guard duty? Are you minding your present? Are you? Are you minding your present? Are you? Are you protecting it? You're too cute, Koko, you are. Too cute.